Welcome to the Sharon Fitzmaurice podcast and episode 82 today. And my guest is Zachariah Grace, a musician, sound healer, and Reiki master teacher from Santa Fe, New Mexico. He is the founder and owner of Southwest School of Reiki and has been practicing massage therapy since 2012, and he also teaches it. How I came across Zachariah is through his beautiful music. He's a recording artist, sharing his album Walking Home, his single Sacred Waters, and his single Shaman with the world through all major streaming platforms. He does sound healing events with his Reiki-infused flute sounds all over the US, and I think all over the world now, and is known all over the world. So you are very welcome, Zachariah. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
That is an amazing bio. I know I say that to all my guests, but it really is when you look at a person's body of work. And not just at that, having seen you online and seeing your heart and soul that you put into your music, and I'm sure into your teachings, is quite inspirational. And again, I'm very led by energy. I'm a Reiki master, also Seiki master. So the first thing, if people don't speak, and especially through music, I'm very drawn to the energy, and you can feel somebody's soul nearly speaking to you through their music or maybe through something they're guiding. Have you allowed, Zachariah, your soul to guide you to this moment?
Absolutely. I think that's the only thing that I really know how to do well is just follow the intuition and allow my soul to guide me to each moment. And it's really incredible how so many opportunities present when you're able to just learn how to listen to the energy. To me, energy is our first language. Before we understand a verbal language to communicate, we're understanding the world through energy. And, there's still like the animals, they understand the world through energy, and small children, babies, they understand the world through energy. And I think that that's our first language. And I think that that's an important language for us to maintain in our adulthood as well.
So beautifully put. And for anybody that's listening out there, when they hear us speaking about energy, and I love the way you said energy is our first language, how do you interpret energy?
Yeah, so energy to everything to me is energy. Our thoughts are a form of energy. The words that we speak carry a certain energy. The way that those words affect certain people and sit within their body makes them feel a certain way. Our feelings and emotions are energy. I always think as emotions as energy in motion. And so when we're allowing ourselves to feel those emotions, we're allowing ourselves to process energy. One of the main things I've seen throughout doing healing work over the past 10 years is oftentimes physical imbalances that we experience come from a blockage of emotion or feelings or energy. And when we start to get that flowing again, the chi, the life force, the prana, that's when people are able to come back into homeostasis or balance within their bodies, within their minds, within their emotion, within their spirit.
Absolutely. And I love the way you put it. But if, say, for people that are kind of new to energy work or new to the awareness of energy, I feel somehow there is a shift globally, that people are becoming more and more aware.
Absolutely.
And they're opening up to maybe just delving into, through curiosity, or, somebody said something to them and it kind of sparked something, but they're not sure where to look. For me, I always say, just start just listening, just sit and listen. If you're not sure how to meditate, or if you're not sure who to go to, an energy practitioner, or where you need to start, I would simply say, just sit and simply listen to how your body is responding during certain times, the people you're around, because that's energy. That's kind of the energy awareness, to keep it simple. I think, Zachariah, for me, before we get out here, because some people dive head in and they want to know everything, but they haven't yet got to know themselves.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. A big practice or a big foundation of everything for me is really presence, learning about the present moment and how to tune into that. Over 10 years ago, I discovered the book by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. And that was such a life-changing book for me because I noticed that I spent a lot of my time mentally in the stories of what happened in my past,
Yeah.
or projecting into the future of what I wanted to experience and what, the goals that I had and things like that. But one thing that, that book taught me, but also just practicing body work, massage therapy, and Reiki is just how to be in that present moment awareness. And I noticed that for me, that's when you start to feel the most. Another thing is body sensations. So, I think when we can shift our awareness into what are the sensations that we're feeling inside of our body, that allows us to drop from the space of the head back down into the body, where we can become embodied, so to speak. And so they're a gateway, or they're a tool for us to be able to come into the present moment just by sitting with what we're feeling inside of our body as a sensation that might have a temperature to it. It might have a weight to it. It might have a texture. It might have a color. And when we can abstract that to the mind, it allows us to tap into what we're referring to as energy.
Absolutely gorgeous. So again, I suppose for me, just with you explaining it so beautifully also, is this, we've chosen this beautiful human temple to be here in this lifetime. And it gives us signals all the time, doesn't it, Zachariah, that is calling out to us, and we're not listening until it gets very bad. And someone then comes and said, oh, my back is killing me. But the doctor said there's nothing wrong with it. And you're going, So let's look a little bit further into that. And I also am a mindfulness and meditation teacher. So when you spoke about being present, and mindfulness for me, before I knew it was called mindfulness, was just being present and listening to myself years ago, when learning how to understand what was going on for me inside my head and my body with my emotions. And it brought me on the greatest journey of my life just by being present. When did you first become aware that you needed to be more present in your life, Zachariah?
I would say probably around, it was in my late teenage years, so probably around 17 or 18. I noticed, I just started learning and reading books and getting exposed to different mindfulness things and things like creative visualization. And I noticed just the chaos that I would create for myself by going into the stories of the past and by projecting a lot of my desires into the future. Not to say that those don't still come up sometimes, but my way of navigating those things is much different than it used to be. And so I just recognized the need to be more present and just to be where I'm at right now in each moment in order to get to where it is that I need to go.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's planting that seed, isn't it? And just allowing. For me, it's kind of allowing things to come towards you. And I do say sometimes if they don't come, because years ago, I'm not sure if you were the same, I was like, oh, I have to do this and I'm supposed to do this and I should. And the more that I tried to get it, the more it seemed to go further and further away from me. And then I
Absolutely.
remember, and again, this may be similar to you, but if I work from that passion, from my heart, that something feels really good, I allow it. And it just seems to come so easily once I just allow it and let go of trying to control what it should look like or when it should happen.
I would completely agree with that. Yeah. And so for me, that kind of takes me into a little bit of, what's happening with my Reiki infused flute music. All
Yes.
of that has come from a space of complete surrender. So when I started sharing online, because I've been experimenting with this technique that I use to infuse the music with Reiki for several years, but I just started sharing it at the tail end of 2021. And at the very beginning of 2022 is when I had a video that went viral, and it just created all these different opportunities in my life. But it happened in somewhat of a dark period of my life when everything felt like it was completely falling apart. And the only thing that really felt good for me was to play the flute,
Wow.
because it brought me into the present moment. And it was the only thing that really fed me in those moments. And it was incredible how just doing that thing that I was passionate about, that just helped me to come into this place of total presence, as opposed to thinking about what had just fallen apart in my life and thinking about where I was going to go, was just playing the flute and having that bring me into the present moment. So it had to come from this place of total surrender for things to then shift into a completely different direction.
Mm. You know what? While you were speaking, I just couldn't help. Your heart just is opened up and it's your energy is all around you and it's just flowing. And I'm just mesmerized, just seeing and feeling that energy from you. And when you speak about, your music and even playing the flute, it seems like it's much more than just playing an instrument. It's feels like a deeper connection to your soul, but even to healing for you. It's like really heart energy.
It really is. And there's a reason for that, that I'm happy to share.
Please do.
Cool. So part of my story is that when I was 8 years old, my family moved across the country from Maryland on the east coast of the United States to the southwest region to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we moved because my mother was a Reiki master teacher and a Seikhen master.
Mm,
And she wanted to be in a part of the world where that sort of work was kind of more well known, more accepted, and there was a community of people that she could connect with. And so we moved here, and she found that community and she found, her people, so to speak.
mm,
And then 3 months after we moved here, she went for a walk one evening and she was hit by a truck and she passed away suddenly. But she was listening to a CD called Tao's Tales, which is this Native American flutist. And so when my mother passed away, the last sounds that she heard were the sounds of the Native American flute.
wow.
And so growing up as a child, I would listen to that CD and it acted as a catalyst or a way for me to connect with my mother's energy, in moments when I just felt really sad or scared or just, needed to connect with her love in some way. And so when I got my first flute when I was around 19 years old, it was such a powerful experience for me. It was much more than just an instrument that I was playing. It was a portal, so to speak, for me to
Mm,
connect with my mother. And I started learning Reiki around the same time that I started playing the Native American flute. And both of those things served as, such a deep healing for me
mm,
to, I say that Reiki kind of gave me my mom back in a lot of ways, especially learning distance healing and working with the Hon Shaze Shonen symbol.
mm,
It just gave me a way to feel her energy when I felt like such an absence of her energy in my life for so many years. So every time I play the flute, it really is this heart energy. It really
mm,
is connecting with my soul, with my spirit. And it's not something that feels like it comes from my head.
mm.
If anything, it's like the antidote for me that takes me from the mind back into the heart.
Yeah.
Um, and every time I play, I really just try to let it channel through in the same way you would with Reiki when you
Mm,
perform a Reiki session.
mm. Oh my God, that is such a beautiful. It's a very sad story for 8-year-old Zachariah, but such a beautiful connection now. And I'm not sure, but I'm sure and maybe you feel it yourself very deeply, but your mother is very present with you a lot. You look very dark. I know you have a hat on and everything, but I see this lovely lady, fair hair with most beautiful beaming eyes, smiling beside you. And it's like she's sharing in this moment with you, in sharing the story, because you're honoring her life. You're honoring what she's given to you even though you may not have, knew it when you were 8, there may have been some time, but that deep bond, or what your mother had shared with you and her love and passion for it, you're honoring her because it lives on in you by you creating that space and choice for you to be so present with yourself. I just feel she's so proud of you and so happy where you are.
Thank you. I really feel that. And it's a message that's been echoed to me several times in healing sessions that I've received. There was one Akashic record reading that I got one time where they were channeling the energy of my mother. And what she told me is, in that moment when I was born, when she first held me and looked into my eyes, she knew in that moment that she needed to learn about healing work. And it was like through that, looking into my eyes as a newborn baby, that she knew without a doubt that her path included becoming a healer. Which is interesting to me because I've always, as an adult, looked back and seen that I became a healer because of the inspiration of my mom and losing her in that story. And what she told me in that session is that it was actually the opposite for her, that it was something within me that inspired her to learn about healing work. And so it's really beautiful the way that our
The cycle.
energies, yeah, kind of inspired each other. Um,
Amazing.
and I do feel that she is oftentimes surrounding me and just here with me
Oh, I feel her
doing this.
very present, very strong, such love, but also it just feels like it's so big. You couldn't put it into a room, you couldn't put it into words. It's just so big. But I feel like she's saying, you've reached the world, but you're going to reach further and further and further. And yeah, but you have accepted that gift all out of, you know, your mother passing and having to deal with that loss. So, as a boy of 8 years of age, how did you handle that loss? Have you even words to kind of comprehend or, express what that was like at 8 years of age, losing your mom?
It felt surreal to me at that age. It felt like I was living in some sort of movie that I was watching. It didn't feel like real life at first for a while. Um, and just all the events that kind of surrounded that time, it all just felt very surreal. Like I couldn't believe that that was life at that point, at that
Mm.
age. Um, yeah, I would say, my dad was a great support for me and my brother growing up, and he raised both of us on his own. Never remarried, so it was just the three of us for a long time. And it was really as a teenager that the hurt and the pain and the trauma started to arise in really unhealthy ways for me. And I started getting into a lot of trouble and hanging out with really rough crowds and not making some very smart choices.
Mm.
I remember my dad telling me that he was very afraid that I was going to die because of the things that I was doing at that time. And he had to come into this place of just surrendering and trusting that I was going to be okay because I was pretty stubborn at that age. And
Yeah, like us all at teenage years. Yeah.
absolutely. But, it was through those experiences that I really was able to tap in to that pain. And I think that it was, it's kind of like you were saying towards the beginning of this meeting, there's these soul contracts, is what I like to call them, but there's these experiences that we sign up for within these human bodies, and we go through these experiences to learn specific lessons. And so my path as a healer includes, the trauma of losing my mom at a young age, and it includes going and having this really rough and rowdy
Mm.
teenagehood, and then it includes becoming a young father at 19 years of
Wow.
age, and that completely shifting things for me. But I think it's through going through all these experiences that I'm able to have so much compassion for a lot of the people that I'm doing healing work with, because
Mm.
I understand what it feels like to be in some of those darkest, deepest moments and feelings that we can experience within life. And I
Mm.
think that many healers experience similar paths where they go through very traumatic or hard or challenging experiences and find their way through it. It's kind of like each person has their own personal hero's journey. And it's through those experiences and through that journey that we're able to become the people that we're meant to be.
I could listen to you all day, Zachariah. And it's so true, and again, I can resonate with the rowdy teenage years and all of that. For me, it was anger. It was looking for someone to blame for everything that had happened in my childhood and for all the hurt that was caused, but also trying to find who I was in the world. And I think that's what many teenagers are still trying to do. And they rebel against their parents and against society, but they're really crying out for someone to notice them and see the real them, to see who they really are inside, because people just see the rowdiness, they just see the troublemaker, they see, all of that. But looking past that, because I said, what everybody wants at the end of the day is to be seen and to be heard and to be loved. That's all of us. And when you take away someone that meant so much to you, and to a child, it could probably have felt like your mom was just taken away from you, not having, of course, we don't have that understanding or the emotional awareness as a child. And then it comes out in teenage years. But there is, you said a beautiful thing there, that we all have this, I suppose for me, it's a choice. I always come back to choice and say, do I want to stay in this anger and trauma and bitterness, or what other direction would I like to go in? And I know, and maybe you've experienced this as well, sometimes we meet people and they can't see another choice. Right. They only have the experience of the trauma, and it's a huge part of them. And if they let go of the trauma, who are they without that? Have you experienced that, Zachariah?
Yeah, that's been a huge part of my journey, I would say, is I kind of realized 5 or 6 years ago when I was going through another very challenging experience in my life that I was making a choice to identify with my story. I was so identified with the story of the things that have happened to me and thought that that was who I was, this story, these events, these things that have happened. And I realized that I had to make a choice between identifying with that story or identifying with the energy I experienced when I was doing Reiki or teaching workshops or playing the flute. It was a completely different energy than what the story was, and so I kind of had this conflict within myself of who am I? Am I my story, or am I what I experience in these moments of healing? Which doesn't really feel connected to the story. It just feels connected to the presence of energy. We go back and talk about energy. But I think that a lot of the times we become so identified with the story, we become so identified with the experiences of what happened to us, that we truly believe that that's who we are. And when we have that identity of this is who we are, I feel as though it limits us into experiencing other aspects of our soul, of our spirit, of ourself, because we're so much more than just the experiences of what happened to us. But it can be very challenging to let go of that identification with those experiences, with those stories.
Yeah, it's so true. And again, through my own past experiences and you speaking about yours, I know that many of the listeners may be going through their own trauma experience, or identifying with the trauma of their story and very much still in it, and for me, it's a feeling of moving through it. It was part of me, but it also wasn't a part of me. And, you say identifying as it or with it. So for me, it was what led me to where I am and through my own healing journey. And I always said I was moving through it. I always felt like I was moving through it. And what's interesting, you said you stood back and you were looking at your life kind of at 8 years of age as if it was a movie. And sometimes I think of my life that I was a character in that movie at that time, and that I knew somehow on a level, even when I was a child, that I could change it, that it wasn't going to always stay the same, even though I had no control and power over the circumstances or people at that time. But somewhere inside of me, and that's a knowing, I suppose maybe us
Mhm.
children do know until we forget again as a teenager, and then we come back to realization. But I always had that sense that I was moving through this earth. I remember holding out my hand and as a child and feeling energy. And it was so overwhelming at times. I remember trying to make it smaller in my hand. In my mind, I was trying to work out a way that the energy of what was going on in my life wasn't so overpowering. So as a child, I used to just do this with my hand to make it smaller. Little did I know I was working with energy. It didn't, none of those words were in my language at the time. And
Sure.
but I think back now, and that's what I'd say. If you look back to young Zachariah, do you think he was just an amazing young person?
I really do. I remember myself as a young child just being very loving. Everywhere I
Mm,
went, I was very affectionate. I loved being the kid that was going around giving everybody hugs.
yeah,
And I loved the way that I was able to just brighten people's days.
yeah,
And I see that same quality within my own two children. It's like everywhere they go, they just have a way of bringing joy to the people around them. And that's something that my parents always commented about with me is that I was a very social kid. I was very loving, very affectionate. And it was, that was just what I loved to do. I loved to
mm,
make people feel loved and to make
mm,
people feel joyful and happy. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like I'm able to do that as an adult now as well, just in a different way. I
mm,
found a way um, through sharing my own creativity and passion and just kind of being a channel for this energy of love
mm,
to come through in the music or in Reiki sessions or
mm,
massage sessions or whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm able to help bring that energy into a person's life, whether
yeah.
it's an individual or a group of individuals.
Because it is all love at the end of the day. It's either love or fear. And I always say, keep it simple. It's either love or fear. And whichever choice you make, always ask yourself, is it based on love or is it based on fear? And I think with any work, that anybody does in the world that has the intention of bringing that love through, whatever they want to call it, but especially, in listening to your music, and even last night, you had a live Instagram with Patrick Ziegler. Is that right? Last night. And I only
That's
got the
correct.
last when you were playing music. And of course, I was sitting there and I could just sit here forever, Zachariah, and just
Oh,
listen to you. It really is, So I encourage all of my listeners, I'll be putting up all the links that you can go and listen to Zachariah, because once you listen, you'll want to go back time and time again. Your music, it does really touch your heart. But more than that, it's kind of like a movement of the soul.
mm,
That's what I feel. It feels like a movement within the soul, within my soul, I should say. I shouldn't be speaking for anybody else, but you can actually feel your vibration changing as you're listening to the music. If you really just connect with the music and just say, okay, I just put, as you said, surrender everything else and just surrender to the moment, surrender to the sound, surrender to the experience. And you will actually feel the vibration changing in and around you. And that's just from listening to you, as I said, all week and listening last night again. And it wasn't just because we were going to be chatting on the podcast today. It was because there is something so beautiful about what your energy is offering through the music.
thank you. Thank you so much. That really, yeah, I feel that. And I feel the same experience when I'm playing the music.
Mm,
For me, I feel like when I pick up my flutes and when I play the flutes, it's just as therapeutic and just as much for myself as it
mm,
is for the audience and the listeners.
yeah.
It's one of those things that if I feel as though I need to get the energy moving within my own body,
Mm,
playing the flute has such a beautiful way of just moving through and allowing the energy to transform and resonate. I think sound, vibration, and frequency are medicines that have been known and used since ancient times. And there was a quote that I heard several years ago from Edgar Cayce, who said, "Sound will be the medicine of our future." And the more research I've done into sound and frequencies and vibration, it's been the medicine of the past, and it will continue to be the medicine of the present and of the future. I think that we're coming into an awareness on the planet that we can use things like sound and vibration and frequencies in a big way to help ourselves, to help us individually in our lives, but also to help us in a worldwide planetary sort of basis. And one of the things that I love about the music that I'm sharing is that it's reaching people from all over the world. And when it comes to music and sound, there's no language barrier. You don't have to speak the same language, but something about the vibration and the way that the sounds make you feel, that's universal. And anybody can relate to that and can understand that. And so it's beautiful for me to hear feedback from people. I get messages all the time from people that are from different countries that are like, "I'm so sorry, my English isn't all that great, but I just want to communicate to you that this is so meaningful." And to me, it's like, it's okay. My understanding of the language you speak is not all that great either. But through the music, we're able to have this conversation, and it's more of an energetic or soul conversation that happens between two people.
Oh, absolutely. I really do. As I said, I really encourage all my listeners to listen because it is just so beautiful. What do your children say to their dad when they see their lovely dad playing this gorgeous flute and these beautiful sounds coming from it? What do they say? What ages are your children first, Zachariah?
Sure. So my oldest daughter, Amaya, is 10 years old, and my younger daughter, Skylin, is 6 years old.
Oh,
And both of them absolutely adore the flute. They love the flute, and they love seeing, um, how many people appreciate it. They're really proud of their dad for
I
that.
bet you they
And
are daddy's fans.
yeah, that feels really amazing. We also, so there's a song that my parents used to sing me every night before going to bed, and it was called Zacky's Song. And ever since my children were young, I've been singing that song to them, but kind of changed the lyrics around a little bit to fit for my
Yeah.
daughters. And we have a nighttime routine of me playing the flute of the melody to the song and then them singing the words to the song. And that's part of our bedtime routine to help them go to bed. And it's always incredible to me that when I'm playing the flute and when they're singing the melodies and I'm just allowing the energy to come through, I always hear them take this big yawn, this big deep breath, and it just helps their whole nervous system to relax. It shifts them into what I would call the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest function within them, and prepares them to allow their bodies to relax to go to sleep. One of the things that I've heard from many people is that the music that I offer is one of the only things that will help their children go to bed at night.
Oh, you're
And
going to be
so
a big hit with every parent on this podcast. So they'll all want you
it's
personally playing the flute for them.
it's amazing, yeah. And it's so cool that a recording can actually help, like the children, like we were saying before, energy is our first language. And I feel like children are still so connected to that.
Yeah.
And so they're able to hear this music, they're able to hear and feel the energy coming from the music, and it's able to help them to calm down. And so some of my biggest fans are children, and I love that. I think that that's amazing.
Wow.
But going back to your question about my children, they're very happy. They're very proud of their dad, which feels really good for me. And they're also interested in learning how to play the flutes. And so my oldest daughter, Amaya, has actually become pretty good at playing the flute. And for her talent show at school, I guess it was 2 years ago now, she played the flute.
Oh,
And everybody was coming up afterwards and they were like, "That was a recording, right? That wasn't actually her playing." And we were like, "No, that was her. She was
wow.
playing the flute." And just really cool to see that, they have a passion for it as well. And yeah, I've also gotten to share Reiki with them. I've attuned them both to Reiki level 1 so that they have a tool that they can use for self-regulation, that they can use for helping themselves in stressful times. And it's almost, to me, it's very significant because it's like the third generation of Reiki practitioners within the lineage of my family. From my mother to me, and from me to my daughters. And perhaps someday from them to their own children.
And again, there the cycle continues of passing on the love and the energy and the healing and the wisdom and the tools. It's just so beautiful, Zachariah. And I said, now I see why your mom is so proud of you. You know, you have carried her energy within your heart and passed it on to your beautiful children, but not just your children, it's to the world and everybody that comes across you. And you have such a beautiful energy. You are a very calming soul. You have a lovely, well, again, we come back to energy, but there's a lovely sense of presence with you. And when you're present, you're really with the person, you're fully focused on them. And I think that would be one of the best attributes that I would ever see in people, when I meet them face to face on the street or here with my clients or groups, is being present with another person and really valuing their time, their words, sometimes without the words, again, the energy, what you can feel without the words. And you have that automatically just sitting here in your energy, even though it's through a screen, it can be felt. So I can see why people all over the world are drawn to you. And I don't think it is your music, but I think it's also you, because you're the one putting the heart into it. You're or letting it flow from within you. So, because I'm sure if I picked up the flute tomorrow now, it'd be a very different story. They'd be screaming off Instagram.
Thank you. I really appreciate that,
No.
And I would agree, I've had a lot of students ask me over the years, what's the most important thing about doing healing work? What's the technique, or what is it that makes the work that you do so powerful? And I heard you say it earlier, it really is a quality of listening. If you can learn to just listen, then whether you're doing body work, when you're listening, when you're doing massage and body work, the body tells you what it needs. When you're doing a Reiki session, the energy tells you the chakras, the different parts of the body, where it's stuck within the body. The client tells you exactly what's needed as long as you can take the time to listen. When we come in with this agenda of, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and that, and I'm going to release this muscle, and then I'm going to open this chakra, and we have this whole plan of what we need to do to help this person, we're then in this state of doing instead of this state of being. And I think the quality that helps us to get back into the state of being is listening. It's a deep listening, it's a deep presence, and it's a curiosity. It's a compassionate curiosity where we're listening not with an agenda to figure out what's happening, but just to truly witness that person exactly where they are in that moment without trying to fix, change, or anything else, but just listening and just being present with that. And I think it's that quality of listening that really allows the inner healer within each person to get to work, because I firmly believe that each person has the ability to heal themselves. It's really just about removing the obstacles that stand in the way from us being able to tap into that quality within ourselves. And I think that's one of the things that my music is doing for people, is it helps them to remove the obstacles that block them from being able to contact their own inner healer. And so when people give me the feedback of experiencing all this healing from my music, to me, there's a knowing that what's happening is they're experiencing their own inner healer, bringing their own bodies back into alignment. And the music has a way of helping people to tap into that.
And what they're doing is they are listening because they're present with the music. They're aware of how the music is moving through them and how their body is experiencing that sound and frequency. And as they become more present, they start listening to maybe the thoughts or the way they're feeling in that moment. And all of a sudden they're really aware and they're going, how did that happen?
Right. Right. It's incredible. And it feels really amazing to know that it's impacting people in that way.
Oh my God, it really is. You know, as I said, from the first moment I heard you, it is because for me, I always say it's like every one of our souls has a song,
Mm.
and we don't hear it on a day-to-day basis because we're all too busy and we're busy, busy, busy. But when we stop and there's moments of awareness, I hear a lot of people saying, I felt for a moment, you know, like they'd say, oh, I felt like singing. You know, that's joy and happiness, you know, but it's your soul vibrating that beautiful energy, trying to get you to say, we can be this joyful and happy all of the time, but you keep getting in the way with your thoughts and hello, you're too busy. So one of the things that I have started doing in my practice, and it just makes all sense when you say it, because you say it a little bit more eloquently maybe than me, Zachariah, but it is before even any of my clients come. And it was something I was guided to do years ago by one of my own spiritual teachers that is not physically here on this earth. And he has a
Hmm.
great sense of humor like me. He has bright blue eyes and he is just the most, every time I see him or feel him around me, I'm smiling from ear to ear. And I was nervously as I started off, you know, being a Reiki practitioner. And I want to ask you about this. And I was thinking, what have I to do? And oh my God, will I remember all of the symbols and all of those things that we get stuck on? And I remember I just sat with him for a few moments and I said, please, please help me. I don't know if I can do this. And he said, you have to do nothing. You have to do nothing. You have to sit and you have to be present. So sit. And I said, but she's not due for an hour. And he said, the more reason to sit. And I sat and he just said, take out a pen and paper and you write a love letter from her soul. Oh my God, Zachariah. It was the most profound, one of the other most profound things that happened to me in my life. I just started listening to this. I'd never met this person before, my first client. And I said, you have committed to coming here and whatever is going on for you. And I'm trusting my spiritual guide, Ella Pedro. And I said, will you allow me for my soul to connect with your soul to help you for your highest good with greatest intentions of love? And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And when that person came in, and I was still nervous because I thought this person's going to think I'm crazy. And I asked them, you know, how could I serve them? What was going on? And of course, there was lots of physical ailments and there was lots of worry and stress. And then I said, I hope you don't mind. I said, but I tuned into your energy before you came. And they were like, what? How did you do that? And I said, I listened and I read them out what I had written. And everything was exactly what was going on for that person.
Wow.
And to me, I was just, this is the trust. And this is where I trust the energy. And I did, that was 14 years ago. And I've done it for every single client that I've ever worked with. And even though I'm not sure what it means because it's not for me, it's for them, that is what you are speaking about, the listening to the soul energy, because our soul wants what's best for us. It wants us to guide us into the love and the healing. It doesn't want us to stay stuck in the trauma or the pain. That's just, again, another little pathway that we move through to learn more about ourselves, just like you had experienced in your young life and your rebellious teenager years. But look where you ended up at 19 and started choosing. And that's where I use the word choice. You started choosing to draw on the love that was inside you, even though you were deeply hurt and you needed to heal your own trauma, you still chose that love, even if it was buried underneath you, you still chose the love.
Yeah. Thank you for that reflection. And it's really cool to hear that mirrored back.
Yeah.
I do feel as though that's what it was, you know, the love that I had within me was always really present, but it was kind
Mm.
of buried, like you had said, under these different experiences. And it was something, you know, and I think that a big part of it was this knowing that I was going to become a father, you know,
Ah.
and remembering the love that I felt as a child from both of my parents, and a knowing that I needed to recover that love within myself so that I could share
Mm.
that with my own children as
Mm.
well. Um, and you had mentioned, you know, a spirit guide of sorts.
Mm.
I feel as though that was a big part of my journey as well. You know, my mom has served as one of my main guides, but
Mhm.
even before she passed, she would always joke, "You have an army of angels watching over you." You know, there was times as a child when I would run out in front of a moving car and something would happen where I was always okay, you know, and
Mm.
she was convinced that I had an army of angels watching over me. And I think that's a big part of it, is that I've always had spiritual guides. I've always had these angels, these guides, whatever
Mm.
words you want to give to it,
Mm.
guiding me back to what we could call our song. I like that you
Yeah.
used that
Oh, yeah.
before. And they've always been singing the song to me. It's just I wasn't always listening to it.
Mm.
And so at a certain point, I was able to start listening to it again. And I think, you know, artwork was actually one of the main ways that I started listening again, doing
Yeah.
abstract painting.
Mm.
And then it was body work and energy work, and then it was music.
Mm.
There's so many different avenues that we can take to come back to our song, to come
Mm.
back to that love, to come back to that truth within us. And I also just wanted to acknowledge what you had said about your first experience, your
Mm.
first client. That was very powerful. And I imagine that that planted the seed for, like you said, the trust
Mm.
in the work, being able to have that confirmation of sharing that with your client and having it be so on point with everything that they were experiencing.
Mm.
For that to be your first experience with a client, I imagine that was just such a powerful confirmation that all you really need to do is listen.
Mhm. Yeah. And again, the trust was not just trusting my spiritual guide, but it was trusting myself and trusting that flow as we do with the universal energy, with the love that's coming through. As I always say, I'm the channel. I just have to clear all the rest of the shite out to let the love flow in. And it's really what it's all about in our lives. But the trust was a huge thing for me because it was something I never did. I never trusted myself. I'm not sure, where you stand on that. But it was something where it was the first time I really, really believed that I could trust myself because I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it for another person. And I so wanted to give this person as much love as I could give them in that moment. Because again, we don't know what anyone's background is or where they are in their lives. And you could be the one person that could help them just reach a little connection to themselves. And I don't put that pressure on us, but it's just like if you can be present, if you can listen, if you can just be that love for that 1 hour or 2 hours or however long you're with them, just give them, as much as you can in that time, that they will walk away. And if they get nothing else, that that person was present with me and they really listened to who I was and to what I needed to say. That's
Yeah,
enough, isn't it?
I would agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
what it reminds me, for me, the experience of really, really learning that lesson of listening and trust and just being present, was actually when I got invited to do some Reiki work at this retreat center called the National Veterans Wellness and Healing Center.
Mm.
So this was a 7-day retreat for veterans with very high levels of PTSD.
Mm.
And it was funded by the government, which was very cool. So the participants didn't have to pay for this experience, but they did have to meet a certain criteria of having a pretty severe level of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm.
And I remember when I got this opportunity, I was pretty intimidated. You know, I remember introducing myself, and I must have been only 20, 21, maybe 22 years old. I was pretty young.
Mm.
And I was in this room full of veterans and their spouses, introducing myself and talking about Reiki and really having them look at me like I had two heads, you know. But what happened is that, you know, a lot of these men and women were in such a place in their life where they were really willing to try anything if it could help them. And so I would have them come into the room and I would have them lay down on the table and I would just do a very basic Reiki level 1 treatment for them. I wasn't trying to do anything super fancy, any journeying into anything. I was just laying my hands down and going through the different hand positions from head to toe, you know, scanning the energy, seeing what I felt, but really just going through a basic treatment with them and just coming in with this compassion and this love and this intention of like, I just hope that if nothing else, this is relaxing for them. And there was always this certain moment in the sessions where they would take this deep breath. And I started calling it the moment of join up. It was like they would come into the room, kind of like planning out their escape, so to speak, looking at the different doors, like, okay, how could I get out of this if I need to? But then after about 5 or 10 minutes of just laying my hands down and doing Reiki, there was this moment of, and it was almost like the first time they'd been able to experience that within themselves for years and years and years. And it was just this beautiful knowing for me. It really taught me that there's nothing that you need to do in order to create this healing experience for somebody, but just coming with this intention and just with this openness, with this presence, and just allowing it to channel through. That's all that's needed, you know. And it really built a lot of trust in myself, in my ability to just be present and come with compassion for this person, and how powerful that can truly be for somebody to experience that when they're going through really hard times.
Oh my God. Yeah. And again, for even when you're speaking it, you know, I can feel it. And it is, for me, I always say it's holding that space for somebody, even if it's in a room full of lots of people, but just
Right.
holding the space and just being present with that one person. And just when you talk about, you know, it's almost a relief or a letting go and just allowing themselves to feel supported, that they don't have to hold themselves up, protected and guarded for a few minutes or a little bit of that day, that somebody's going to hold them and that it's safe to allow themselves to do that. And I always think that is a beautiful gift that people give themselves, even if they're not sure what they're giving to themselves. But it's a lovely honor, I always think, as well, for somebody else to trust you to create that space for them. So I always say I'm very humbled, and I just think, I always say to me, it's like, again, I will continue to do this as long as I can hold the space with love and compassion, and that people still want to come here, you know, and feel
Absolutely.
that, you know, that's the reason we do this work, is because, again, we've experienced it, and many people around the world have experienced trauma, and they haven't found that path or that connection to themselves. And they may be listening to this and going, "Ye two are woo-woo, you know, what are you talking about?" You know, we've never experienced that. But that's why I'm thinking is, again, if anybody is out there and they're not sure what we're talking about, it's to just, as even Zachariah said, it's just being present with yourself. If you just listen to Zachariah's music and sit there and with no expectations of yourself or anything else, and just allow yourself to flow within the movement of the sound, of the energy, and let him know what you feel, because you will feel, you cannot help but feel something. And that's not just because we work with energy and we have this awareness. Music, for me, all kinds of music, all genres of music, there are certain songs, certain sounds that will reach in and they will grab hold of your soul, so it can sing a little bit louder to you today, to override that busy mind and those overwhelming emotions that sometimes take over our lives. So get on and listen to Zachariah's music. You will be absolutely blown away. Zachariah, you are just an amazing, beautiful, beautiful soul.
Thank
I
you.
am so grateful that your mother shared Reiki with you and that she shared her love of the Native American flute by you finding that CD that she was playing, and that you were able to connect to her on such a beautiful level and heal that sadness and loss and pain and the trauma that you went through as a child. And through that experience, you're now moving out into the whole universe to help so many people. And as you said, there are no limits or boundaries to your music. There's no language limits or boundaries because you just have to sit and be present.
Mm,
Is there any last words, Zachariah, you would like to share with my listeners or even with me?
sure. Well, I think some final words that I'll share are some opportunities that I'm creating um, for the world. And one of those opportunities is something that I'm calling VSH, virtual sound healings. And so on 19th of February, I am doing a virtual sound healing where I'm inviting people to come. It is for 90 minutes and it's going to be hosted through Zoom. There's limited availability for how many people can come, but it's an opportunity for people to really just sit live with me through a screen still, but live and receive. I'm going to go through each of the 7 chakras with all the different flutes that I have and really help people to experience this presence, to experience this energy through a Zoom call. And so if people want to get more information about that, they can visit my website, which is zachthereikiguy.com. And besides that, I'm putting a lot more energy into my YouTube channel. And so I've had a lot of requests from people for longer videos that they could use to sleep at night. So last week I put up my first 8-hour video on my YouTube channel, and that one is done with a flute in the key of E, which relates to the solar plexus chakra. So that one's really good for helping to balance the nervous system, digestive tract, all of those things related to solar plexus chakra. And they can find that on my YouTube channel, which is Zach the Reiki Guy.
Just look up Zach the Reiki Guy because you'll find him everywhere. Because you're on
Exactly.
TikTok at Zach the Reiki Guy and Instagram also.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find your music as well, Zachariah Grace, under iTunes, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and obviously, as you just said, YouTube as well. You do offer monthly sound healings as well. And you had the one on the 19th of February. Do you do individual distant sound healings for one-to-one clients as well, Zachariah?
I have done that before, yes. My schedule currently is so busy that I haven't been able to take on
Yeah,
more one-on-one clients. I'm focusing more on doing group sessions just
yeah.
because I feel as though I can benefit multiple people that all want the same thing simultaneously, where it can be a little bit more challenging for me to find those one-on-one slots right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
That may change down the line, but currently it's more of the group work that I'm focused on. I'm also getting ready to head up to Denver, Colorado to work with Patrick Ziegler in person at an all of Sikhem retreat that he's doing there on the 27th and 28th of January. And I'm going to be offering my flute medicine throughout the workshop up there. So I'm excited about
Beautiful.
that.
Well, if you ever come to Ireland, know that you are invited to my annual retreats.
Woo.
And yes, because we have a lady that does, Nora Coyne, that does all the sound bowls and the gongs and everything else, but she
Love
doesn't
that.
play the Native American flute. And we also have a lady that does fire ceremonies and we walk the fire as well. And I do all the beautiful meditation and mindfulness and energy work. So we think we could fit you right in, Zachariah.
It would be an honor. Yeah,
You're welcome.
I've always wanted to visit Ireland, so
Oh, really?
we'll make that
Oh,
happen someday.
absolutely. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I just know that your group events are going to just spill out everywhere because there is such energy in groups, even when we're not in the same room, but it's the combined energy together with that intention and you leading it and facilitating this healing is just an amazing opportunity for everybody to come together and experience that. So well done, Zachariah. I just wish you all the love in the world, all the joy, all the success, and everything that there is for you. But you're already there.
Thank you. It feels surreal, you know, it feels surreal in a lot of ways, and it also just feels so perfect. You know, I feel as though I'm exactly where I need to be on my path right now.
Yeah, you definitely are, and you're shining, and your energy is shining with it. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and sharing so much love with us all. And I want to thank you to my listeners for listening. I will share all of Zachariah's details in the show or notes, and I will be sharing some snippets. And when the podcast is out, I will tag Zachariah. Please pop on, follow him from there, and let him know when you've listened, and go and listen to his music. Thank you, everyone. Look after yourself, and I'll see you all soon.